Hello and good evening. I have the pleasure to introduce Rebecca Merlic today. She will give us an insight into her work as a digital artist. She's a senior scientist at the Universität der Bildenden Künste in Vienna. And she is probably going to give us an insight into GLITCHBODIES, which is a world-building co-creation environment where you use game engines to explore non-heterogeneous body types. And I think I take it away with that, please.
Okay. Yes, okay. Yes, thank you, Rüdiger, for the invitation, and thank you all for coming. I will give you an insight of two of my projects, GLITCHBODIES, you already mentioned, and also a new project, Kissaten Vienna, having the topic of cultural heritage and also digital representation of heritage we are losing, which is coffeehouse culture in Austria and in Japan. And yes, I think I see myself as a digital artist as well as a digital architect and film. I'm coming from the background of architecture, but specialized in digital production of art and architecture. So somehow this is how I became a world builder, I would say. For the people who don't know the term of world building, the goal of world building is to establish a rich and consistent backdrop that enhances the storytelling experience, allowing the readers, viewers, or players to better understand and engage with narrative and also with the characters, with that fictional, in brackets, real world, because for me it's also coming from reality. So I create digital worlds, but always with a big archive of different data coming from reality and capturing different data. And as you know, world building is a common practice in science fiction and fantasy, but also different genres. And I want to apply it to digital art, filmmaking, and architecture. So the project GLITCHBODIES, as you can see here, it was supported by the BMKÖS, a great call. It's called Pixel Bytes and Film, and it's focused on experimental filmmaking. So I had the honor to be one of the recipients to receive the project funding, because as you could imagine, producing it's not really a game. It's kind of, I use game engines as a tool, but it's more of an artwork, and to find funding between categories, it's always hard. So I think it's a great opportunity for me to explore my projects through this call. And here you can see not all of the protagonists, but it's more than 59 protagonists of GLITCHBODIES worldwide. And it's a project to find ways of digital representation for non-heteronormative, let's say, ideologies, or also to create a safer political space for digital representation of marginalized persons. And for me, it was very important to find a way how to co-produce or co-create these worlds. And the project itself, since it was a film funding, I also had to create a short movie, which was also very interesting for me, because of course I wanted to do the single-player game, which is a walking simulator, and there is some small interactions in the game, but the genre of walking simulator would be the genre, let's say it like this. But then also I had to produce a short movie, because this is where the funding was coming from. And for me, it was very interesting then to connect with people who are more coming from the film industries, since now I'm a filmmaker, but I wasn't 3 years ago, let's say. So it started as a single-player video game. Then it was a short movie. Then there was a call from Berlin if I could produce a VR piece out of it. So we also created a VR experience. And later I wanted to do also performance with it, and also to challenge how performance could look like. Since a lot of the Glitch Bodies protagonists are coming from performance art, so it was kind of a development. And I would say Glitch Bodies is a multi-platform project. So who is Glitch Bodies? So I started the project in Vienna during the first lockdown, which was very hard to do, actually, with the collective Wer ist Dichter? Let's go. I will later tell more, but with Wer ist Dichter, with Alexandru Kosakas over a beer, there was this idea I had 2016. And Alexandru was very keen on the project and asked around who would be interested. So we first created multiple game scenes with the collective Wer ist Dichter. And then later I went to Hamburg, Berlin, Munich, Zagreb, everywhere I could travel, even during the pandemic. And then also later to Bangkok, London, and Tokyo in the end. I will show you a quick trailer, so you have some visual idea about the project. It's yeah. Where is it? Wait, sorry. It's Command L, no? Yeah. So these are the 59 protagonists from multiple cities, and the youngest one was 7 months old. It's my nephew Valentino, and I was also capturing the body transformations. Also, when I say capturing, I usually work with a handheld 3D scanner for the person, and then build the whole game scene using 3D modeling software, and then building a big archive on not only 3D scanning, but also sound recordings, interviews with the protagonists. They would give me some of their works. For example, Glit and Tony Renaissance gave their music. I had Marie-Louise Elena giving me a story, so we narrated her story and built a game scene around that. Or, as mentioned, Motherland is a game scene which is tackling the issue of body transformation also during pregnancy and when you get older. And the funny thing was Valentino was very small, so I was kind of afraid to scan him with the scanner. I just used the phone and he would move, and kind of the scan looks really scary, and for me it's not so scary, but the audience sometimes have a problem with this weird baby scan. And also creating this digital archives. I think this is the base of all the works, and this digital archive is now 3 years old, but it's always developed, and I always find new protagonists who want to be part of it. So I will talk a little bit about the process. As I already mentioned, I started with Wer ist Dichter and also with New Peace. New Peace is an artist from Bangkok. I met 2016 and somehow gave me the idea of how could a game experience look like to translate body transformations, but also different feminist practices and politics. So I also traveled then when I could. We traveled to Bangkok, me and my team, and 3D scanned everyone in Bangkok. And the behind the scenes, for example, in Vienna, it was very hard because it was locked down, and you could imagine it's, I move around the person and 3D scan the person, but it was pandemic, we weren't even allowed to meet, so we did this at the university. And started the project, and there was a lot of breaks because of the pandemic. And then also when it was possible, I went to Bangkok, and of course there was also lockdown, so I would rent out a hotel room, and the protagonist would come to the hotel room, and we would do this like in a hotel room in Bangkok. And also how I found all these people, it was all through friends of friends, and it was like a little network. There was never an open call. Now people are approaching me to also be part of it. But it was really nice how it developed, like how everybody knew someone who would maybe be interested. And yeah. And for me, the biggest topic is how can new technologies kind of feed these co-creative and inclusive productions. And a lot of artists say they work inclusively, they want to be co-creative. But I think with this project, it was a lot of work also for me as a, let's say, lead artist, to step back and really give the freedom to all the protagonists to work with me. And I was also thinking, how could this inclusive processes be made? Because in the end, I'm the one, and with a very small team, like with Vivian Schreiber, she's the Unity programmer working with me on the project, and Manuel Riegler is the sound artist. Very small team, and if you have 59 protagonists, how can you communicate your progress of projects? So for me, it's a very easy solution. Because also the protagonists are not coming maybe from digital arts. Some of them are, but most of them never worked with a game engine. So I invited them to my studio and showed them how the Unity interface looks like and what can be done with it. And there was a lot of questions if I don't know, it would be possible. There was Marie-Louise Elena making this joke, you know, is it possible to create like a landscape out of different breasts, and they're wobbling and you can walk around through different breasts, and you know, it should be very soft and wobbly. And while listening to her story, and she asked it as a joke, more or less. But I said, of course, it's very easy to do, actually. We can do it. And then there was like really interesting outcomes from the writing workshops. And I made this kind of form. It sounds very boring, but it's a form where the protagonist can choose the scale of the player, for example, or can I enter the body, or should there be some kind of invisible barrier? All of the protagonists wanted to kind of be bigger in scale than the player. It was very interesting for me, and some of them wanted to be entered and wanted to be very like huge, like becoming architectures of the scene. So for me, it was very interesting to do these writing workshops, and also then very easy to implement, because then when we did the production, it was very easy to have this kind of form where there were some ideas how the sound would sound like, or what the architecture should look like, or what should be the feeling transported in the scene. Some of them were very colorful and maybe architecture-wise very interesting. For example, House of Rausch, it's a collective also from Vienna, and they wanted a temple as a base, and then you walk through a bordel, I don't know, it's like a bordel room, and then you walk on a ginkgo tree, and then you start flying, and I was like, okay, I don't know how to do it, but somehow we will try to manage to work as closely on the forums itself. So this was a very easy tool, actually, really then very analog, to write down how you want to be represented. And for me and my team, it was very, let's say, it was not easy, but yeah, it was a way how to produce something with inclusion in mind, and also how to make a co-creative process, because of course I couldn't send every day some updates, but I would always, when we would finish a scene, I would try to contact the artists and show them the outcomes. And what was very important for me, that I pay everybody fair. So I didn't earn anything on this project. It was very hard on me, let's say, but it was very important for me that everybody was paid, and also the same. Nevertheless, you work in Bangkok or in Europe. And also, yeah, just taking this. This is why also now we stopped at 59 protagonists, because there's no additional funding. Because now people are approaching me, they want to be part of the project, but I don't have the funds to pay them. So this is why it's kind of stopping. But for me, it was very, let's say, very important. The topic on fair pay, and also how to co-create. And I made very clear to all the protagonists, if they would not be happy with the outcome, they can be erased from the project. Luckily, nobody actually, I mean, from the movie it's not possible, but from the game, of course, I could actually erase whole game scenes or the person. But for now, everybody was very happy with the outcome. So it's kind of, this world building is a gamification method for me, and for the protagonists to narrate different realities, and to make this multi-platform project diverse, very diverse. And I think without this co-creative and inclusive working method, it would not become this really huge archive of different representation and different aesthetics. You know, it doesn't, I think, when I looked at it in the end, I think even if I wanted to create something like this as an artist, it's impossible if you don't have this 59 ideas also. Yes, and then to the topic on performance. So when we finished the project, I was very interested in how it could become a performance piece also. So I had this idea, I would play it live, and Manuel Riegler would take the sound archive and also play this sound live, and then have different protagonists on stage. So the first performance we tried out, actually, I was still working at experimental game cultures at the Angewandte, and we were invited by Margarete Jahrmann for the Ludwig-Soiree to try it out in the auditorium at the Angewandte in Vienna. And it was very spontaneous, and we didn't have actually time to rehearse, which was insane to do this. Also for my sound designer, it was very hard for him, because he's also producing a lot of sound for performance, and there you have like 2 weeks before intensive proben, I don't know, and rehearsals. And I just said, okay, this project is so diverse, let's just try it out. And in the end, I invited Wer ist Dichter from Vienna, but also Aurora-san from Bangkok, because he was doing a performance in Mainz, so it was very cheap for me also to bring him to Vienna, luckily. And so we had this, I would say, opera. It was not a performance. It took us 2.5 hours to do this performance, because I wanted to show all the game scenes. Even when protagonists are not live on stage, I wanted to show the audience the other protagonists who could not perform in this evening. And I was very interested also in this format of representation, if somebody's also not in Vienna. And I continued with this. So even later I will show you a picture from Bangkok. I also showed all the Viennese game scenes there, and somehow the audience, maybe they were lying, but I asked in the end if it was boring, because if you imagine if I would have written this, and it should have been 30 minutes, but we extended 2.5 hours. But somehow nobody was bored, nobody left. It was kind of a full auditorium, so it was for me, very interesting also to work in performance and also question what can be contemporary performance combined with games. And then I went to Bangkok, where I had the initial idea of Glitch Bodies. And it was very important for me to find also a venue in Bangkok, so I knew this club. It's a techno club, and now it's closed, unfortunately, but they had this huge 15-meter LED wall. And there's not really documentation from this evening because it was very chaotic. I just had in mind, okay, I know this club, I will go to Bangkok and just ask them if it's possible to do a performance in the club, because I wanted to use their equipment. And they said, yes, of course. And then when I arrived in Bangkok, they said, okay, we won't charge you any money, but you have to make sure that the whole evening is booked out and that after the performance, there will be some techno DJs playing the whole night. And of course, I don't know any techno DJs in Bangkok, but there's one protagonist, Panlert. He's a DJ, and somehow I spent 1 month going out in Bangkok and then kind of making this planning this whole DJ event as well. And also asking the protagonists if they can come. And it was beautiful to work with the Bangkok artists, but also we had this topic of language, where communication, or when you want to work together, maybe having different opinions on how this could work out. And it was they made it very interesting, because they said, yes, they will come to the performance, but then they didn't come. And then at some point we started the performance and they started coming in and just performing. It was very intense evening for me, also organizing this and organizing additional equipment in Thai and with Google Translate, and also having this big audience in the club sit down on the club floor, because as you can imagine, it's not the nicest floor to sit down, but somehow everybody would sit down, and we had a really great evening. And luckily we got some little support from the Austrian embassy, but actually I needed to make some money with selling tickets to pay all the artists. And for me it was very, yeah, like I was reminded of organizing a punk concert somewhere in a village. I don't know why, but just to be dependent on that 170 people come to the club and pay the entry to then have the possibility to pay all the artists. And also, if you can imagine, Bangkok is a really huge city. It's very huge, and then the performers would leave. And then the next day I had the problem of how can I pay them, because I had all these cash, you know, the Thai baht, and then I had the idea of buying cakes and putting the money in the cake, and then having Grab drivers, it's something like Foodora or something, to actually give them the cake to certain addresses, and this is how we actually then distributed also the money we earned in the, because yeah, it was very, I think for me, one of the most successful ideas, because it was just a stupid idea to actually do this. But everything is possible if you just want to do it, I think. And then there was a really nice coincidence that Lisa Holzinger was on vacation in Bangkok, and she was in the club, and she saw the performance, and then she saw a lot of Viennese artists represented in the game, and then she asked me, okay, can you do this performance piece also in Vienna? So we had the chance to show the piece at Spit Festival in Tanzquartier in Wien, which also was different compared to the Angewandte. So we already had this experience where then I would curate more carefully maybe, and there was a time limit. I could not do this show for 2.5 hours, and it was also very nice to work actually with Tanzquartier also together. And then as a final thing, Berlin Art Week, I also had the opportunity to create this VR experience from Glitch Bodies, and also exhibited at Berlin Art Week, where we also received the DKB VR Art Award. Anna Rüth helped me with her master project. Actually, she developed the VR programming for her master thesis in Munich, at TU Munich. And the curator in Berlin, she wanted to show all the different versions of glitch bodies, which for me was kind of just a weird idea because I thought it's just repetition. But in the end, we had the movie and the VR piece as well as the game. And then I also created some augmented part where I would put the group of glitch bodies artists in the room. And I have to say I was very surprised when we really did the setup, this layering of augmented reality with like the game and the wallpaper, even the analog part was very interesting for me. And I think it was very successful, and I didn't have the feeling it was repetition, because also the VR piece is very challenging to use. Actually, it's more kind of for a VR gamer who would have some experience. So I wanted to make it also hard to play, and so for a lot of journalists were very angry because they could not navigate easily through the VR, and there was a Spiegel, article which really didn't say nice things about the project, because I think she was very stressed not to be good in the VR game. But for me, it was like a project. I worked on it for 3 years, and it was just, I didn't want to make this boring VR thing where you just, teleport yourself. But I really wanted to work with the assets in the game. For example, with the ginkgo tree and the butterfly. There are some butterfly wings, and you can pick them up and fly around instead of walking. Or there's a really nice scene from Judith Kranz, which is a comic book artist from Hamburg, and I had some sketches from her new comic book, which will be out next year, and we tried to build the 3D scene from her ideas of her comic. And then there's like a really huge hole. Maybe you saw it in the trailer, but in the VR experience, of course, I would jump through the hole because I knew nothing would happen, but people were really frightened, and they were scared to jump through the hole. So I thought, okay, it's really something else also to have this body in VR next to you compared to the single player game. It's really a different experience. And it was maybe an amazing experience to also see the game scenes in VR. It's very different how you can interact, and also your body is more present in the game, I would say, than in just the single player one. And I invited then the Berlin artists also to do a little performance. So we had Monika Freinberger, Judith Kranz actually she dressed up as her comic protagonist, and Selina Huber did a reading, and Monika Freinberger is also an actress. So we had really this very spontaneous, very spontaneous performance. And then also we showed the game at Ars Electronica. It received also honorary mentions in 2023. And also to show the game in deep space, it's also a totally different approach and a different experience for the audience. Yes, and there you can see a little hint. So this is Oberchan. She's a protagonist from a different project. It's called Domum, and she's now 101 years old, and she was 100 years old when I 3D scanned her. I was there on residency in a small village in Ikisan. It's close to Itoshima and close to Fukuoka, so it's very much rural Japan. And I was invited by Studio Kura to do a residency there, and it's actually her, it's the great-grandmother from the curator. First they wanted me to scan their children and to work with their children, which I don't do. I mean, I just did it with Valentino because he's kind of my nephew, but I think it's also very different to get consent from children and what happens in 20 years when they see themselves in an artwork. So I really don't want to work with children, so they offered me the grandma, and I said like, okay, this is really great, and she's a very powerful woman. She had she lives her whole life. I mean, she lived through 3 wars, and it's just insane how you can still be so active in this kind of age and still also say it's okay that somebody will 3D scan you. I mean, and also, yeah, the nephew translated, but also getting consent from her was a little bit tricky for me. And she had, she wanted to be 3D scanned standing up, which is very hard to do for her. So she really suffered during the scanning, and I was also not sure if it's nice, you know, but she wanted to walk the street in the game. So I really programmed her like walking down the street, because she's not doing this anymore. She's usually just sitting in her living room and doing little tasks and looking into the courtyard where all the artists would gather and I would pass. I don't know. She's really amazing, and she's now 101, still alive. This gave me the idea to also work with elderly. You know, we always, in terms of digital art, and if we talk about gamification or if we talk about creating digital architecture, somehow we forget about the elderly, and they're really interested in the works. And she was very interested in it, and she told me it's like when they introduced photography, you also had to stand really still for a couple of minutes, and she compared the 3D scanning to this time, which she witnessed, you know. So for me it was very nice to work with her, and then I had the idea to work with coffeehouse culture in Japan. During my studies also I love to go to Kissatens. It's Japanese coffee houses where you could have a cup of coffee and smoke, and also not being able to smoke everywhere in Tokyo, so it was nice to actually go there to have a cigarette and a coffee. So I was introduced by this Japanese style coffee houses, and I had the idea of doing this project in Vienna and in Tokyo, or let's say in Vienna and in Japan. And last February I went to Japan to find Kissaten owners who would be willing to work with me. And usually I really have no problems of doing projects in Japan, and people are very keen, since I also studied there at Tokyo Gaidai, and it's very famous art school because of their music department. But the Kissaten owners are very unique, I would say, because it is kind of a coffee house, but it's a very social space, and it's more kind of just for the regular visitors. And also now it's becoming more popular because of Instagram, because they still have their old school dishes and very comparable to Viennese coffeehouse culture or Austrian coffeehouse culture, but very kind of closed. So I didn't find a lot of, I just found one coffeehouse, one Kissaten in Tokyo who was willing to work with me. That's him. And for the rest, I had to travel all over Japan with Akinamba, my partner in this project, and to actually talk to the people and get access to their coffee houses. Some of them needed to be persuaded because they thought we were YouTubers, and this is something very negative in Japan. And when we kind of, you know, got their trust, we got 4 Kissatens in Japan on different locations and not really like in big cities. So for me it was still very interesting to work with them, and usually the Kissaten owners would be okay with the 3D scanning part, but they didn't want to be interviewed, which is also surprising for me. So this is how a Japanese Kissaten can look. This is one of my favorites. It's called Tokyo Moto, and the owner is he's an art collector his whole life. So the whole Kissaten is stuffed with antiques and paintings, and also paintings from famous painters, very similar to Austrian coffee houses, where it was always a hotspot for artists and writers to meet. And you almost cannot walk past to the toilet because it's so full of things. So for me it was very interesting also to capture it with the 3D scanner, and also to capture the owner. And the owner said yes to the 3D scanning part, but only if there was no customer inside. So we sat there for 9 hours We had like all the drinks they had on, and I don't know, 4 toasts. So we waited the whole day to get the 4 minutes of fame to scan him. And he even thought that we're really like successful artists. So we had to sign this little paper you always see in Japanese restaurants when famous people come to the restaurant. So it was a big honor for me to be recognized now in Japan, because he thought it's important that I sign this piece of paper. This is the owner. And I also did some interviews. So Aki did the interviews. I asked her the questions, but I wanted to have, I didn't want for her to always translate, because I always feel that interview or a discussion in one language as a kind of personal interview works best. So I got to know what they said 2 weeks later when we arrived to Vienna. And then we traveled around Japan, actually, also to Okayama, and found different style of coffee houses. This is very clean. It was made by a famous architect in the 60s. And there I scanned the whole family and the customers, also doing interviews. And so the next steps of the project are actually from Japan to come to Vienna, and also to work with the Viennese coffee house culture. And I don't know if you know this coffee house, but it's a very important one. This Kaffee Korb, and the owner is Susanne Wiedel, an amazing performance artist, actress, what else? Coffee house owner in Vienna. And now I'm in the search of coffee houses which are also like spaces where you can discuss politics, and also a social space for artists, for writers, for the public, of course also for the tourists. So I have the honor to actually collaborate with her and to co-create her game scene and her representation for this new project. And yeah, this is also, I mean, I'm trying to build my own assets. So we had this, I'm very happy about the 3D scan of the perfect melange, because the milk, the cream is really like evaporating quickly. So I didn't have a lot of time to actually capture. And also the Apfelstrudel, of course, and some data from her past, and of course her partner, Peter Weibel. I mean, it's an immense access to data, you know, to have this, to capture this culture of her coffee house, and what it meant for artists. And this is the project we are currently working on, and it will be, the world premiere will be at the next expo in Osaka. I'm very happy to represent the city of Vienna, and city of Vienna is also funding this project. I think this is where we're now, and also I had this weird idea to work with collections from museums. So I wrote a lot of Viennese museums, and also of course the MAC, because they have all the porcelain and, you know, all the design objects in their collection, which is almost never visible for the audience, and just in special exhibitions. So I want to use this project also to capture their collection and make it more accessible for the audience. And yeah, this is where I'm at now. I hope we will produce it until March. And I think this, compared to my other projects, this is, for me, I want to challenge the app as an artwork. So it will be an app. I think it's very provocative to say an app can be an artwork, but we will see. And it will also be an installation with a hologram display, which we will get from Schönbrunn Museum, also in the Austrian pavilion. So it will be very interesting to work with the app as a medium, because since I noticed that in a lot of exhibitions I'm asked, okay, can I play this at home, or can I have a closer look at home? And for Glitch Bodies, it was not possible because it is a safer space, and I don't want to publish it. I want to kind of curate narratives or in which context it's exhibited. But for the coffeehouse Kissaten Vienna project, it will be an app, and visitors at the expo can just scan the QR code. And I will also publish it, of course, in different app stores. And it will be very challenging now to produce it, since I've never done an app before, but I also never done a movie. So I think this idea of working in different media and working with different outcome and what can be considered art should be very broad and should be discussed. And I think this is my main goal in my work. And I hope you had a good insight. I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So now we go with the question part.
Yeah.
Are there any questions as of now? I have a few, but I can start.
Okay, yeah.
So you said you wanted it to be a safer space, so that's why you do not put it out.
Yeah.
How do you normally, whenever I hear this kind of point of view, and it normally goes towards open source, so it's actually the opposite. So like, to what extent, what do you fear when you say you wanted this to be a safer space? Like, what do you don't want people to do with your application or with your software?
I mean, I think for Glitch Bodies, when I produced it with the protagonists, they trusted me with their stories and with their bodies, and I think it's a very important topic. But it's also, Glitch Bodies is not a safe space because there is no safe space, not in the real world, not in the digital world. And I think for very sensitive topics, it was for me clearly that I don't put it on Steam because of comments and hateful comments and homophobic comments where I could not guarantee that it will stay a safer space. So this is, for Glitch Bodies, it was for me never the question that I will publish it on Steam or any other, I mean, I think if I would have discuss it in the beginning with all the protagonists and everybody would be okay with it, it would be a different question. But for me now, it will stay just this digital archive, which is accessible because now I just came back from Leipzig. Even now, it's like a lot of film festivals are showing it and a lot of XR exhibitions connected to documentary film festivals. So I think it's still very public because it's exhibited a lot. But I would not publish it online because digital space is even more unsafe than the real world because, of hateful comments or threats or,
So follow up, sorry. So you're not talking about actually people have the ability to alter the content. We're talking about comments and how to do feedback and how. Okay, I understand. But is there a version where people can actually alter the content as well? Or is it just about feedback and talks and chats?
What do you mean with alter?
No, it's for instance,
what do you mean with no, it's like a produced game in the end.
Exactly, but I was just wondering if there's like maybe an open aspect to it that people actually can interact with the game, or if the interaction is mainly that you play it and then you use comments in the game.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean,
I misunderstood.
But now for Kissaten Vienna, I want to somehow a very easy idea would be I would like to have this section where people could narrate some coffeehouse stories of their past, because I have the feeling that everybody, this project can connect with everyone, because somehow everybody knows what a coffeehouse is in Austria and also in Japan, so everybody has some story. And I think there will be some more kind of, maybe some section where you could tell your story or type your story or interact with it, but it's still not really clear how we will do it, how we will implement it. But I want to have some, also with this project, I want to work with Gaussian splats, which is like a new format. Also why I never produced an app, because I somehow like the very clear aesthetics, and if you produce something for a gaming PC and it's like playable, and if you don't have to download 2 gigabytes of game. So for now it's really something very experimental for me also to use Gaussian splats in combination with 3D scans, because it should be playable on every phone. And then maybe there would be a possibility where the audience or the player could add some 3D scans of certain coffee houses or places or objects. This would be kind of maybe the question, I don't know. Answer.
I was just trying to figure
out. No, with GLITCHBODIES it's like a finished product, let's say. It's I will build some more game scenes. I think it will, over the years it will develop further, but it's more or less the interaction is just the game itself, and to click on stuff and then listen to stories, or I built in some videos on videos as a digital material, and yeah, you can watch some movies inside, but yeah, that's not really, you cannot change the world. It's not a...
Any questions?
Yeah.
No, just quick ones, please.
So, hi, thank you very much for the talk. I have 2 quick questions. Are there some scenes from the Kissaten project going into GLITCHBODIES?
Are there some scenes?
Or like that you have the coffee house then in the GLITCHBODIES project, as it's like a little bit comparable, because you do the 3D scans of the coffee places too and the owner. So in theory it would be...
for the coffee house project, since we're working with the phone, I mean, it will be like a different format. Okay. But it will also be in a life-size hologram display, which I never tried out. I hope we can try it before we fly to Osaka. It's more like the representation of the people from the Kissatens and coffee houses, and I will use some background from the coffee houses as Gaussian splats. But also now I just showed you the backstory, like not the backstory, but the coffee houses, but I think I will also work with 3D sculptures. I will create from different objects from the mug, but also from Kissatens and Viennese coffee houses I scanned. So there will be some kind of weird sculptures and some hints to find objects in the sculpture. And when you find the object, then you will get the story of, for example, Susanne Wiedel or Elfriede Jelinek talking about Susanne Wiedel, or Peter Weibel talking about her and the coffee house, to get this little, it's not information, it's more like stories from the past,
And my second question is that maybe also targets like both projects. You mentioned several times that it was very important to fair pay the participants. Were you able to fair pay yourself too, or is this a little bit more difficult? Because it was a very long project, and I guess a lot of work, and so it's...
I don't have even the hours. It was years. I mean, now from when did we start? I think the funding I got end of 2020, could it be? Yeah. I mean, the fair pay was just possible because I didn't take any honorar, which is insane, but I was having a university job to survive somehow. But for me, it was very important. And even now, when people approach me, I just want to be part of the project. I can work for free. I don't do it. It's something we should really talk about. And I did some workshop also with UNESCO and all these leading institutions in Austria. And usually the artist is always never paid. But for me, it's very important. And of course, now I could not have the funding to pay Susanne Wiedel as collaborator, but she really wants to support the project with her person. And so in this project, also the Kissaten owners, they didn't want money, but I think, they refused to take the money. But of course, the team is all fair paid in this project.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I also have a question about the fair pay, because you said now Glitch Buddies cannot continue because you don't have the funding anymore to pay fair. Have you ever considered of using animals?
Animals? Yes. Yes, but animals move. The thing is, you have to hold still. I tried to scan. I mean, I have a different project where I did a penalty shooter game, Victoria, with a Croatian artist together, Jacob Beljan, where we also didn't have the funding, but it was just our friends. We said, okay, we need some goalkeepers who wants to, you know, we have free beer and fun, and yeah. And then I tried really multiple times to scan a dog, and it's just moving. Maybe with the Gaussian splat it's possible.
Or maybe a snail.
A snail. Yeah, a snail would be possible. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have a scanner which is like really good for people, scanning persons, and also small objects. But if they're too small, for example, with the mug, I wanted to have this really nice porcelain, you know, from Franz Josef and Sissi, and they were really nice. We have like really old porcelain, and they really had problems of 3D scanning with a different scanner, and they said, okay, great, let's do this collaboration. And I said, yes, I will. It will work perfectly. I can scan anything. I'm the best scanner in Vienna. And then I came there, and porcelain is a very weird material, and it was very hard to scan the porcelain cups. Like bigger porcelain sculptures, it worked really nicely, but I was sweating a lot when, you know, it was very embarrassing because I said, okay, this will go easy. And it was really hard to scan the porcelain cup. I don't know why, maybe because it's lichtdurchlässig or, but yeah, I mean, we did, I really tried, and we have some good results, but it was not so easy. And also with animals, yeah, or maybe when they sleep. But it's flashing, I don't know. Yeah, maybe with animals, it would be nice. But maybe with animals, I would actually maybe 3D model them and then rig them, because I think also movement, if you say animals, I'm always like, this movement or, yeah.
Hi, thank you for your talk. Yeah. Can you reflect a little bit on this medium, like the 3D world that you have to deal with? Like, when I understand it correctly, you use a lot of static scans. Do you like this aesthetics, or like is it more like a limitation for you? And also, it's a very visual centered medium, like you don't really touch things, they don't really have a weight, or like sometimes you can walk through them. It's what do you like about the medium, and or what do you see maybe difficult to handle in a like in staging or in the whole
I think for Glitch Bodies it was more like also creating these poses and to see it also like a digital representation of the person, and also how they would pose or hold the pose. And also I scanned sometimes Harald Stojan, I scanned 11 scans, you know. Harry just wanted, you know, I want 5 different outfits, and then, I don't know, 2 poses per outfit, and it was really like intense because I scanned him the whole day. So it was more like working also with the body and freezing this moment. It was not about moving around, or even if I would rig the bodies, it would look very trashy, I think. It would be a different, in terms of production, I would produce this whole project differently, or I would not work with the handheld scanner. I mean, I think I would maybe just scan the face and then create the body, which it was not interesting for me. It was, I really wanted the real body and not recreate it to just move it. But I'm very interested in rigging bodies as well. I just have the feeling somehow I'm working with the static, and everything else moves, you know. Maybe it doesn't feel so static when you play it, because the leaves move, or I work a lot with particle systems. And for example, Alexandru wanted to be the door, you know, his hat, it's like the subway door to the subway, and which people really like. Yeah, it was just a decision to work with the handheld scanner. And I also had my first game I did was just scanning my body, and yeah, it was I was always working with static bodies.
That would maybe be my second question. Like, sometimes you call it an archive, sometimes you call it a game. How do you decide what it really is?
I think it's both, but archive is so negative somehow. For me, an archive is something which is from, like, something from the past, and I think it's still alive. This project is still alive and will be. So it is kind of a digital archive, but it's also a game. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, as we have so much archival data and there's so much history, I think it would be actually nice to have the access through like some kind of gamification to this. So I do not agree that archives are.
The last subnetTALK was about the museum, and then we discussed why is it a museum, and now we're discussing why is it an archive. I mean, it's like an archive is basically not staged. It's not a curated thing. It's a possibility of things, and you have scenes, you have some kind of scripted interactions, you put in videos as well. So maybe people go through the whole thing in a certain part.
But I think an archive is very much staged. I mean, and very much like created. I mean, what do we in let's say in Europe think about how an archive can look like? You know, you have categories, and you have. But I still feel it's staged somehow. I would disagree. I don't know. It's very. Maybe it can be also seen as an archive because it's different data on different topics and different categories, but the categories are more game scenes. It's not called, I don't know, it's you know, it's just the game scenes, and the game portals can be actually categories, seen as categories from an archive, which is just different. The structure is maybe different, and we think very structured in Europe. Yeah.
So we'll time for one more question. Anybody? I got a few.
Okay.
Okay, then I would like to end the whole discussion with the beginning, and you said it's going to be about co-creation. So from everything I heard from your point of view, I would like you to answer me. Where does, from your point of view, co-creation start, and where does service end? Because everything you've been telling me is like you've been building worlds for other people. To what extent, how do you see the co-creation element? They bring the personality to the game, or they bring their own points of views to the game, or do they actually co-create? Just from my personal understanding.
I think all of it. Of course, they told me how the game scene should look like, or how they wanted to be represented in digital space. But I think most of the project was talking. Like, even when we did the production, it was just a little part. When we produced it, it was finished in 3 months. Most of it was really talking personally to everyone involved, and talking back and forth to find a common language, visual language, but also so they trusted me all with their stories, even if I say stories now, but it can mean a song or an actual story, or just an experience of an environment they wanted to be placed in. So I feel it's very much a very successful co-creative project, and for me, of course, somehow I'm behind it. But it developed. The more people joined, the more it developed, and the more diverse it became. And I think this is how you can co-create. It doesn't mean that, you know, they decide this lamp is red, but I think it's all about communication, and I think I spent 2 years of talking. It's just like, and sometimes also discussing, and sometimes also a little bit of fighting and a little bit of happy talk. It was like everything. It was a lot of personal talks with everyone. And also that they gave me their bodies as well. I mean, I think it's a very intimate way to capture a person. And everyone who got scanned is like, oh, this feels really weird somehow, and very intimate in a way. So I feel that this is what co-creation is, to have trust also in the person you're kind of co-creating with.
So then, let's bring it to an end, and thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.